And before we get started, I would like to introduce our co-hosts for this evening. Tonight we have Council Member Leslie Poole with us and Council Member Chito Vela. And I would hand it over to Council Member
Recording
Poole
in progress.
to give a few remarks.
Evening, everybody. I'm Councilmember Leslie Poole, and I represent District 7. It is wonderful to have so many neighbors gathered together this evening. Crestview Station Area is one of the most important pieces in our evolving transit network. So thank you to the Austin Transit Partnership and Cap Metro for being here to share plans and answer questions and hear feedback. My fellow council member Chito Vela is here as well, and please note we are hosting another gathering on this topic. It will be the afternoon of Sunday, June 5, for continued discussion about Crestview Station Area. It'll be informal from 2 to 4 in the afternoon. It'll be at Black Star Co-op, and you'll be able to visit one-on-one with representatives from the Transit Partnership and Cap Metro. So make sure you are signed up for my newsletter or Councilmember Vela's newsletter and stay updated on that event and other significant activities that are going forward. You can go to our websites to make sure you're on our email lists. So thank you very much for being here tonight. And with that, Councilmember Vela would like to say a few words and then we'll get started. Councilmember Vela.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Poole. Appreciate your remarks and your introduction. I am very excited about Project Connect. It is probably the most important environmental project the City of Austin has undertaken since the Save Our Spring days in the 1980s and 1990s. It could really transform the city. And importantly, it's also an investment in making Austin a welcoming city for our working class people. Transit fills the transportation needs of working class folks more than any other. And this will be a critical investment in making Austin an affordable city as well. Much of the planning has been done in regards to Project Connect, but there are important areas that are still pending. One of them being the design of Crestview Station, the way that the trains and the traffic will all interact. It's going to be a big a choke point. It's going to be a connection point for so many different people that we want to get it right. And it's great to have the community out here to help us work through those decisions and possibilities. And just very briefly, one other thing I wanted to bring up is that I'm pushing for is to bury the electric lines for Project Connect between 51st Street and 183. We're going to be using a lot of the street for transit. We still need to make room for vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists, and I think we're going to need that right away. And I am going to be pushing hard for burying the electric lines to make sure that we have enough right of way to make North Lamar the beautiful boulevard that it will be in the future. Thank you so much.
And Jackie, if I could just make one little additional note, I just got a note that Councilmember Ann Kitchen has joined the group tonight. So she will be listening in as well. And hello to our colleague. Thanks for being here.
Welcome, Council Member. All right, with that, we'll get started. So again, my name is Jackie Nierenberg. I want to welcome you all to our meeting. We realize that you all have busy schedules and we're really grateful that you've taken some time to spend with us tonight to talk about this really interesting area we call Crestview Station Area. First, I'd like to go over the agenda. So first, we will be doing introductions of our speakers, and then we will go over the objectives of tonight's workshop. We'll discuss the Crestview Station Area, neighborhood and historical context. Then we'll discuss the planning context of the station area. We'll also look at all of the active projects that are touching this very busy area of town. And it is a very complicated group of interdependent projects. And so we wanted to give everybody a chance to talk about what they've got going on here. Then we'll have a Q&A session. And then we're going to look at some key urban design considerations and another Q&A session. And then we'll look at building a vision for placemaking at Crestview Station. and wrap that up with Q&A and talk a little bit about next steps. So before we get started on the actual agenda, I do want to talk a little bit about interpretation, accessing interpretation. For now, we're going to keep everyone muted, and the chat feature will be disabled until we go to our Q&A and our Mentimeter questions. If you're participating in Spanish, you should be hearing live Spanish translations at this time. And if you would like to listen to this meeting in Spanish, just click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and select the Spanish language option. Si gusta tener interpretación viva en español, por favor haga clic en el botón interpretación en la parte baja de su pantalla y seleccione español. Zoom also provides live English language captioning during today's meeting. To access it, please click Show Subtitle or Live Transcript at the bottom of your screen. This should open subtitles on screen, and you can adjust the font size of the captions by clicking Adjust Settings. If you need help with this feature, please let the meeting host know in the chat. And now I'd like to introduce our for this evening. So you've already met our co-hosts, our council members, Poole and Vela. And now I'd like to introduce Peter Mullen with the Austin Transit Partnership. And you guys, when I call your name, just turn on your camera and say hello. Anique Baudet with the City of Austin's Project Connect office. Anna Land with our Equitable TOD or Transit Oriented Development Project with Cap Metro. Katie Fitzgold with the city's Corridor Program Office. Katie Wedig with the city's Urban Trails Program. Jill Fagan with the City of Austin's Economic Development Department. Ben Barlin, developer of the new Crestview Village project. Lonnie Stern with the Austin Transit Partnership. Abby Tomlinson with our Orange Line team. Megan Scornia with Asakura Robinson. King Call with our Capital Projects team at Cap Metro and Austin Transit Partnership. And Isis Hernandez with the Orange Line team. Thanks, everybody. And now I will hand it off to Peter Mullen, who is going to talk about this evening's meeting objectives. Take it away, Peter.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you to Council Members Poole and Bella for co-hosting tonight. Really appreciate it. And go to the next, please, Gwen. So, first I just want to start off, why are we here today? And I think the council members started off recognizing that the Crestview Station area is this really powerful transit node in our city, certainly a critical component of Project Connect, where both the red line and the orange line come together, as well as multiple bus lines. So it's a really powerful transit opportunity. But we also there are lots of other things going on. And so we're going to hear from various public agencies and private developers about the various plans in place. And so we want to make sure that the community and you all really understand all the different plans that are in the works for this this intersection. But just as importantly, if not more importantly, we really want to hear from you, right? What makes the Crestview Station area unique, and what are your hopes and visions and priorities, right? We want to we know there's going to be a lot of change and transformation coming to this part of the city. What do we want that to look like? How do we make that consistent with our hopes and dreams and make it everything that it can be? So, and our goal for this meeting is to figure out with you how we can take all of these projects and incorporate them into a singular vision for this place. It's one place, and we want it to represent the best of our values and hopes for the future. So, and create a really high quality public realm. So we hope and we look forward to doing that with you. Next. So I'm going to hand it over quickly to Abby, who's going to do a little exercise to learn more about you. So see you in a minute.
Ooh, exciting. Mentimeter. It's time.
Great.
Out your phones, which this is one of my favorite parts of all of these shows. Have you used Mentimeter before, Megan?
I have a little bit. Yes, I'm excited to see the results.
Well, the thing that I think is most exciting here is that whether you're in Zoom or you're on Facebook or you're on Twitter or you're on YouTube, you can participate in this meeting. You don't just have to be on Zoom. You can either point your phone at the screen and use the QR code, or you can go to www.menti.com, that's menti.com, and enter the code 6071-6232. And then we can hear from you, even though the mics are turned off and the chat is turned off. It's a very exciting thing, especially given that there's like 100 people in the audience so far tonight.
Sure, and we'll be asking a few questions using this method throughout the presentation this evening.
Well, great, and we're at about 50 people, so I know that about half of the people in the audience would like to express their opinion. And I have to say, there's so many parts to this show tonight that we're asking a few different things. So there's some questions about like who you are and how do you interact with this place? What are some of your hopes and fears? What are some significant places? So like get the juices flowing, like channel your inner Crestview. That's what we're trying to do today. And I'd like to see us get, I don't know, at least 3 out of the 4 people who are in the audience tonight. So staff and consultants, resist the urge. Don't join Mentimeter unless you are in the audience, a public member.
Yeah, it's great for us to see who all's here and to figure out which groups we need to reach out to outside of this meeting, who wasn't represented, what groups are really represented. So this is super important to us to figure out. So we really appreciate you all doing this little interactive question.
Yeah, you know, Megan, that's a really important point. When we've done workshops around the community, one, for example, the North Lamar Transit Center, which is really close to this. When we hosted that meeting, based on the participation we had at Mentimeter, we realized that we needed to do different kinds of outreach to reach people who live near that station. And so thanks to your involvement, we knew, all right, we need to go to the transit center during rush hour. We need to go to some of the apartment complexes nearby. And so we want to understand, do you live in this area or are you just passing through? That really makes a difference in terms of what we're planning for the future and who the community is when we say the community around the Crestview Station area.
Absolutely. And I use this sometimes. We figure out that we're not reaching people who work in the area, or we're not reaching people who work in the evenings in the area and things like that. So this is definitely so helpful as we figure out who we're reaching with these meetings.
So at this point, for those of you, we're getting a chat in here. If you don't see anything on your screen, which for many of you, you will, but if not, go to your phone and go to menti.com and put in the code 6071-6232. And Jennifer, who wrote in to us so far, yes, you're not going to see anything on your screen yet, but when we open the gates, you definitely will. Right now, we're just seeing how many people we've got, and we're at about 80 people, which I think is respectable. Although I would encourage more people to join too. So just in case, I'm going to put it into the chat. That way, if you are sitting on the sidelines thinking like, well, do I want to do this? Well, I know you're going to get jealous very soon. So at least it's there in the chat. All right. Well, do you want to get us started? I think, Bill, you can help us move to the questions.
Let's do it.
All right, Megan, you want to?
Yeah, so the first question is, how often do you go to Crestview? You all should see some bars starting to pop up here as the answers are populated. I'm seeing a lot of people that are here every day, which is awesome. That's really great to hear. We're hoping to reach people who use this site day in and day out and really learn from those patterns.
Yeah, so I guess there's a lot of people from North Austin in the call today.
Oh.
South Austin, I'd be one of those people who comes to Crestview every now and then.
Yes.
I think to see some people who live nearby.
And it's also nice to hear from people who, use it less frequently, whether they're coming for events or, something exciting at Black Star, all sorts of different things.
Well, so it looks like we're doing pretty well on this one. Did you want to slide to the next question?
That sounds good to me. So this question is, how do you usually get to Crestview? So let's go ahead and see those answers populate.
I don't see a pedicab on here. Horseback on here as an option.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if micromobility is the other. If you are in the other and want to put in the chat what you use, that'd be great help also.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, Megan, but at one point there was an airfield in this area, so people could have been coming on a small plane as part of their other.
Wow. That definitely would be super interesting. We're not quite there yet, but maybe one day. So it's looking like a lot of,
which is exciting, as well as people who drive to this area. And we're going to have specific questions today, whether you go by foot or bike or bus or train or car. There are different considerations for what would make it an improvement and what would make it feel safe and what might make it feel more comfortable. And so that's why we're trying to get a sense of who's in the room and how to weight your questions that are going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
All right. Next question is, why do you usually spend time in Crestview? So watching those answers populate right now. I live here, jumping to the early lead there.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear it, because there was a lot of flyering in the neighborhood. And if you live in the Argosy apartments, that's my fault. I'm sorry I stuck it to your door, but I'm glad you're here. That's the main thing.
Great. I'm seeing a lot of people shopping there. That's really good. Working there, great. I love to hear about people's work commutes. That's really important, because that's just such a daily activity. So I'm glad to see you all represented here. Thanks for coming.
And and I pass by on my way elsewhere is really helpful too. Because when you think of Crestview, it really could be a major transfer station for people who are switching to the blue line to get to the airport, or maybe they're switching from the red to the orange line to get to South Congress. And so more and more people will just be passing through Crestview. But it's great to see such neighborhood representation tonight.
Yes, definitely.
All right,
they're all in. Great. Next up, we have, what do you enjoy most about the Crestview Station area? Let's go ahead and see those answers populate.
It's one of those open-ended ones where we get to pick out of the flurry of ideas that are coming.
Black Star, yes.
We should be more specific. We want those seasoned fries from Black.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And thanks for bringing some of these in. I don't know, Bill, if you want to scroll a little bit.
I'm seeing a lot of mentions of truly walkable, train to downtown, multimodal. Really great to have you all here to weigh in as we, bring further transit options to this area.
And the great stores nearby. It's really been exciting to watch this area develop, because there's a really great market area, ethnic foods. There's even like a board game bar over there and a brewery, and it's just exciting to see all the things that are walkable in this area.
Sure.
And some people are asking us about Crestview, what we mean. We're talking about the station area. So basically the 5 or 10 minute walk shed around Crestview. So for some of you, you might live in Highland, or I don't know, Northern Highland, Lower Highland. Some of you may actually live in Brentwood technically, but you're within that walk zone to Crestview. So hopefully that helps answer some of that.
Yeah, it's not a super exact definition right now. So, feel free to explain a little bit more in your response if it needs it to.
And again, we're asking, what do you enjoy most about the Crestview Station area? So you don't have to tell us specifically what you love about the Crestview Station, although you're welcome to do so, but about the businesses as well.
Yeah, these are all really great answers that cover kind of the gamut of what we expected. So thanks, y'all.
All right, I think we're doing pretty well there. Let's move to the next one. Is this the last one for this section?
I do believe so, yes.
All right, well then I think we can pass it on to our friend Peter Mullen to continue the conversation with the Crestview neighborhood and historical context.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Lonnie. Great job. Go to the next, please, Gwen. So this is a perfect segue to that question that was asked is, what do we mean when we talk about the Crestview Station area? So really we're focusing on this intersection that you see on the map between Airport Boulevard and Lamar, where the current Red Line station is located, as well as a number of other transit services. And we're really looking at that as the kind of the hub of this multi-neighborhood area. And trying to imagine what that could be in the future as we add more transit through the Orange Line, as well as other projects to this hub. So you can see we've got the Crestview neighborhood, the Brentwood neighborhood, Highland on the east side of Lamar, as well as Wooten to the north, right? Which I think emotionally some people feel attached or connected to the Crestview station. So thinking about how this node could actually serve all these neighborhoods. And you can see those two circles, the inner one, which is a quarter-mile walk radius, maybe 5-minute walk typically, and the outer one, which is a half-mile walk radius or 10 minutes. So a lot of businesses and residences in close proximity to this node. I also want to say that there have been a lot of plans for this neighborhood over the years, and we really want to build on all that knowledge that has been created over time. And so part of tonight, what we're going to do is review all that sort of planning history, just to give us context for thinking about the future. Next. But the history of this site is really interesting. It starts with the railroad. If you think about the Red Line was really built on the backs of what was originally a freight line, actually still is a freight line, but which was built to bring granite from the hill country to Austin to build the capital, right? So that was the impetus for building the freight line, which is now also occupied by the Red Line, and that it really informs a lot of this neighborhood's history going forward. Go to the next. For a long time, until most of the 20th century, this was a largely or significantly dominated by industry. You can see, and this is a picture from 1951. The old University Airport is at the bottom of the screen. Airport Boulevard was called Airport Boulevard not just because of Mueller, but also because the University of Texas had its airport on what is now the Crescent Shopping Center. You can see, on the far part of the screen, some of the industrial buildings, some of which still remain, and then on the sort of upper right, some of the chemical companies that were located. So really largely industrial history, although you can see at the top of the screen the beginnings of the residential transformation of this neighborhood, the emerging Crestview neighborhood. I'm always fascinated by how there are no trees anywhere. So what is now a really verdant place wasn't for a long time. So these things are always in evolution. Go to the next. So you can see a lot of maybe not such residential friendly activities here for a long period of time. And actually, if you go to the next, some of these chemical facilities, the Huntsman chemical plant was on site, into the 21st century. We've been in this process of transformation, and if you go to the next, you can see the difference looking at it now, how much it's changed in the past 20, 25 years, as it really has developed into this mixed use, multi-purpose residential, business, shopping node, all built also around the Red Line and the transit at this intersection. Go to next, please. So this is the site today. You can see, again, we're looking north with Lamar heading up sort of that northern axis, and then airport coming in from the bottom right of your screen, and the Red Line passing through diagonally. And on the, to the north of the Red Line, we've got the Midtown Commons. And then on the south of the red line, the Ryan Drive property, we'll hear more about the future plans for that. And then on the east side of Lamar, we've got the Crescent Shopping Center, which is obviously a really important part of this community in terms of services. And certainly now it's got a lot of Asian restaurants, which is fantastic. So part of the flavor and the diversity of this neighborhood. Next. So one of the things we want to hear from you is what are the things that define this neighborhood broadly, and what are the things, the really special places that make it unique and give it character on any number of levels. And some of you already started populating that in that earlier Mentimeter, but we'll want to hear more about this. Obviously, these small businesses really define the neighborhood. We want to build on those and enable more of that activity and more of that vibrancy as we grow and as the transit brings more people here. And hopefully we can have, those services can be enhanced to serve, the public really broadly. But as well, also we've got, sorry, go back one, playgrounds and parks and ACC. I mean, it's an amazing diversity of services, and we want to leverage that and build upon that going forward. Next. So I'm going to pass it to Roberto Gonzalez at Cat Metro. He's going to talk a little bit about what's currently the Cat Metro services in the area and also what's coming shortly in the future.
Good evening. My name is Roberto Gonzalez. I'm with Capital Metro in the Service Planning Department. As you can see from the slide right here, these are a number of services that operate to and through the Crestview area. On the bus side, we have routes 1, a local route service that's on North Lamar Boulevard. Routes 7 and 300 serve inside the facility. So they actually come into and they anchor inside of the facility right adjacent to the Crestview Red Line station. Those, as you can see from the map, there are in a heavier line type, and that it signifies that they're a high frequency route. So they operate every 15 minutes, pretty much 7 days a week for most of the day. Route 350 is a route that starts at North Lamar Transit Center, just north of Crestview, travels down Airport Boulevard on the west, on the eastern side of our community, and that's a local service. And then most of you may also recognize Route 801, which is our Metro Rapid service with a major stop there at Crestview Station as it travels north and south beyond the facility as it travels to downtown and the University of Texas area and further south. We also have Metro Rail, Red Line, with a major facility there at Crestview Station, and that operates on weekdays and right now on Saturdays as well too. Next slide, please. One item that Peter mentioned is a new opportunity for us to bring to the public, and that is taking a look at Gold Line. So
So it looks like we lost Roberto. Can folks hear me?
Yep, you sound great, Peter.
All right, so maybe I'll fill in, Roberto. If we get you back, you can pick it up. But Roberto was talking about the future plans for the Gold Line. The Gold Line is one of the new Metro Rapid high capacity bus services that's being planned as part of Project Connect, and runs from essentially the Republic Square down in the south, or so downtown, and then on the east side of downtown up through the campus and then up to Highland Mall. We're in the planning stages of the Gold Line right now, and one of the things that we're exploring, Cat Metro is exploring, is extending the Gold Line up to the North Lamar Transit Center, because we think that we have the opportunity to actually make a few more connections, actually significant more connections, and to provide a little bit more multimodality. And so there will be potentially a Gold Line station here at Crestview as well. So this is one of the things that's an aspect of the planning of Project Connect is we try to always make it better. As the design evolves, as this plan evolves, how do we actually increase our services to the community? And this is one example of how we're looking to do that. A little bit of an extra cost associated with operating in capital, but I think Cat Metro feels like that's well worth it in terms of the services that it could provide. Next. Okay, so we're going to move on to the planning context for this area, and I'm going to turn it over to Anique Baudet with the City of Austin.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Councilmember Vela, Councilmember Poole, and also Councilmember Kitchen for being here. On behalf of the city, I'd like to go through a few slides of, really the 2 decades almost of effort that the City of Austin and mostly the residents of Austin have given, the amount of time that they've given in talking about and planning for the future of this area. It's quite impressive. Going all the way back to a visioning process sponsored by Capital Metro called All Systems Go, which was back in 2004. And as a young planner with the City of Austin, I participated in that. I remember being how excited I was to be participating in that. All the way to the Red Line coming on in 2010. And then there were specific transit-oriented development focused policies that were put in place in 2005, and some other code regulatory items put in place in 2006 with regards to design standards to look at our corridors and how they need to support, what they need to be to support transit, to make transit comfortable and a competitive mode. Even back in 2006, which is, over a decade now ago, that we were planning for the need to have high capacity transit and better transit to connect the people in our city to open space jobs, healthcare, education, jobs, all of the things. In 2004, there was also neighborhood planning going on, and those plans are still in place: Crestview, Wootton, Brentwood, Highland. And then we actually did a transit-oriented development station area plan for this area, North Burnett Gateway, where we got a little more specific on a regulatory environment to support transit. And then, of course, the Huntsman site, which is the Ryan Drive site, which we're still talking about now, as it is evolving. As Peter said, things evolve all the way from the turn of the century to now. We're continuing to evolve our city. Midtown Commons came into operation in 2009. And then in 2012, the city updated its comprehensive plan, which was no small task. And it was adopted in the summer of 2012. And after that came many more progressive urban type policies: complete streets, the urban trails plan. The Austin Bicycle Plan was updated to create an all ages and abilities network that really helps with that first and last mile to make transit more vibrant for our city. And it's really, this part of the city is really connected with really good sidewalk and bicycle and trail existing facilities and planned facilities. We also have our Vision Zero policy, which is safety first. Really looking at all of this through a transportation safety lens, and then our sidewalk plan that has served us very well in prioritizing the scarce dollars we have for sidewalks and making sure that they are put to the best use, not only to get folks around their neighborhood to where they want to go, but also to support transit. In 2019, Capital Metro and the City of Austin partnered to update our transportation element of Imagine Austin, which is called the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan. And we partnered to do public engagement together, looking to hear voices that have been historically underrepresented in planning processes and really make a transportation plan that works for everybody. And that was the start of visioning Project Connect. And in 2020, we all know the referendum was successful. Now we have more TOD, transit-oriented development planning going on, ETOD, equitable transit-oriented development, for many of the stations along the orange and the blue line. And then, of course, in 2016, we had a historical investment in a mobility bond, over $700 million for our corridors. And that work is being implemented now as well, and complements Project Connect very well. And then of course there is the Ryan Drive work that's going on. And I want to say one more thing about Imagine Austin before we move forward. You know, the growth concept map for Imagine Austin envisioned growth along our corridors and activity centers and the connections between them. And so this meeting today is implementation of that vision and all of these planning activities that have happened over the last 2 decades. So it's a really exciting moment to be in implementation. Next slide, please. So diving down to this area a bit after that large context, I mentioned that there was a regulatory plan put in place specific to supporting transit for this area with the principles of integrating development and transit so that it's seamless, looking at and prioritizing the quality of the pedestrian environment, facilitating and fostering a mix of uses so that people can get their daily needs met by foot if they're using transit, and a defined center, a defined sense of place. And I think you see that evolving absolutely in what's happening. And then the 3 primary neighborhoods that I mentioned that have neighborhood plans that we want to be looking at through implementation: Crestview, Brentwood, and Highland. Next slide, please. So I mentioned Imagine Austin, and these are the priority programs in Imagine Austin, but I'm just going to mention the first one. I think that Project Connect from a planning perspective hits on all of these things, but investing in a compact and connected Austin is absolutely what we're implementing along with many other of these priorities. Connecting job centers, connecting open space, connecting people, connecting folks to education. ACC is nearby. It'll be a quick ride to the university campus. All of these things, it's very excited to see come into fruition about 10 years after the adoption of our comprehensive plan. Next slide. And then drilling down into the transportation component of our comprehensive plan, I mentioned the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan. And the thing to remember about the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan is that we did a data-driven planning process to figure out what is it going to take to manage traffic congestion. Because as Lonnie mentioned, as we were just talking amongst ourselves prior to the meeting starting, if you ask anybody, what is your #1 complaint about Austin? They always say traffic. Right, so we did some math and we figured out that in the future, if our population doubles every 20 years, like it has been, like clockwork, what mode share or what breakdown of people getting around during rush hour would make it manageable, would we be able to absorb that growth? And it was 50-50, 50% of us driving alone if we need to or we choose to, and the rest of us doing a combination of other things, riding transit, bicycling, walking, teleworking, etc. And if you'll see, the turquoise piece of the pie is transit. We're looking to quadruple transit use by 2039, and Project Connect is going to help us get there. Next slide. So as you can see, the initial investment covers our city with many different services. And what's special about this area is the convergence of the orange line, the blue line, and the red line into one space, one node. And that's why we're here today, to figure out how to best look at the operations and the design of that mode. Next slide. Of those modes, sorry. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague at the City of Austin, or at Cap Metro, I'm sorry, Anna, to talk about the equitable transit-oriented development study that is happening right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anik. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Lan. I am a principal planner here at Capital Metro. I'm really pleased to introduce the Equitable Transit-Oriented Development, or ETOD. This is a Cap Metro-led effort that really helps ensure that future developments near the transit corridors really support the overall quality of life for our communities. This project is supported by a grant that Cap Metro won from the Federal Transit Administration for $1.5 million to study a total of 21 stations on the orange and blue light rail corridor. For this project, our project partners are City of Austin and the Austin Transit Partnership. One of the key things that this project will produce is a set of ETOD policy and strategy recommendations that will be directly incorporated into the council-directed ETOD policy plan. Next slide, please. Out of the 21 stations, a few of these stations will be selected for a more detailed station area vision plan. I would like y'all to know that Crestview is one of the selected stations. Next slide, please. So what makes ETOD different from a traditional TOD? ETOD is really a shift away from the concept in that the E in equitable really advocates that all residents benefit from safe, sustainable, and accessible transportation, especially the vulnerable communities. Our project goals really reflect our priorities, such as expanding access to jobs through high quality multimodal transit, preserving and creating affordable housing, supporting small businesses, and helping to close that racial health and wealth gap. So ETOD, as Anik just presented, is a part of the progression of transit-oriented and transit-friendly policies from the city. Hopefully with our study, we will pass our recommendations to the City of Austin, who will adopt them into the policy plan and then ultimately into the regulatory framework. Next slide, please. This project really prioritizes extensive public engagement, and this is something we try very hard, and it's done through traditional and non-traditional outreach that really allows us to gain deeper input from the community. And some of these methods are compensated focus groups and compensated community connectors to outreach. So out of the 3 total engagement phases in this project, we currently just completed phase 1, which really kind of asked the communities to define their priorities with housing and transportation. Out of all the discussion points, we drew out key themes from what we've heard that we will be using towards our policy recommendations going forward, such as concerns for rising rents and the lack of convenient and safe transit options. The second phase of engagement is starting later this month. I invite everyone to be on the lookout. We'll be on social media broadcasting events and surveys, as well as the ETOD project website, which Lonnie can hopefully drop in the link for us. So this is the project so far, and I'll pass it on. Thank you.
So we're going to hear right now from, just to frame this up, you've heard a little bit about the planning background on this site, which is also now very actively, happening with new planning initiatives. We're now going to hear from a whole series of entities about active projects around the Crestview Station, and it's really exciting. So I'm going to pass it off to Katie with the Corridor Program Office.
Good evening. I'm Katie Fitzgold with the City of Austin's Corridor Program Office. CPO's mission is to design and construct corridors that support mobility, livability, and the goals of the voter-approved 2016 Mobility Bond Program in Austin's contract with the voters. 9 corridors throughout Austin were identified to receive critical safety, mobility, and connectivity improvements. And that's for everybody who walks or bikes or drives or takes transit. Slide. Vision Zero is the Austin community's goal to reduce to 0 the number of people that are hurt or killed in crashes. And doing this by making street improvements and policy changes, and also through some education. The Vision Zero data, like what is represented in these maps, played a crucial role in identifying the 9 corridors that are now part of CPO's corridor construction program, each in various phases of design and construction. Slide. The Corridor Program Office is excited to announce that the segment of Airport Boulevard corridor between 55th Street and North Lamar Boulevard is expected to break ground with some new safety and mobility improvements as early as next month. The work is going to begin at the southern end and work in phases up to the North Lamar Boulevard intersection. With the understanding that Project Connect is going to be working in the same area in just a few years, we have reduced our scope of work to just the most critical interim safety improvements for this intersection. The traffic signals will be upgraded with enhanced technology, and there will be some new mill and overlay with paint restriping in the intersection. The crosswalks will be straightened to reduce the distance pedestrians will have to travel across traffic and will become ADA compliant. There will also be improved pedestrian islands with new push buttons to increase safety. And both right turn only slip lanes will have raised crossings installed to slow turning vehicles and to protect pedestrians crossing the intersection. Specifically for bicyclists, a small median on Justin Lane will be installed to provide increased two-way protection, and a raised bike lane will be installed to connect the new shared use path on the east side with the new St. John's Bikeway that was recently installed. And now I'm going to pass it over to Katie Weddick.
Good evening. I'm Katie Weddick with the City of Austin Urban Trails Program. Next slide. So I'm here to talk about Red Line Parkway Trail, which passes through this area. So the City of Austin adopted an urban trails plan in 2014, and we've been working to implement that plan. In that plan, it calls for what's known as the Red Line Trail, which runs from downtown Austin all the way up to Leander along Capital Metro's Red Line. You can see that in the map pictured here. So portions of this trail have been completed, and then a lot is still to be implemented. So at Crestview, what you can see in the aerial image is that Red Line Trail currently exists along Airport Boulevard, just south of the station. We just heard about the great intersection improvements that are being made by the Corridor Office. So this will connect Red Line Trail to the destinations on the other side of North Lamar Boulevard. So it'll be a great way for users to have improved access and be able to safely cross the street there. The Urban Trails program is then working closely with Capital Metro to determine the best way for Red Line Trail to continue moving along the tracks in this location. So with that, I will turn it over to Jill Fagan.
Hi, if Louisa is on the line, I believe that Louisa was going to speak first about some of the work of the Ryan Drive Working Group.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure you can see me, but I have my camera on. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm so excited to see so many people joining us from the neighborhood and around the area, that all the folks who use Crestview Station. This is going to be an amazing project. I think I wanted to just touch on one piece of it that our office has been working on for several years now, starting, I know that the effort to transform the 6909 Ryan Drive property that's owned by the city started in 2008 or maybe even earlier. But when Councilmember Poole took office, we took it on as a project to make sure that we could get this site re-envisioned and redeveloped in the way that would serve the community and, of course, Crestview Station. So I know we have some folks on the line. Sorry if you hear the kids in the background. We have some folks on the line who were part of a Ryan Drive working group that was formed, made up of neighbors and from different backgrounds, from Highland, Brentwood, Crestview Station, and Midtown Commons, all joining together to re-envision, to put together a report about the priorities for the neighborhood that they saw that they really wanted to see implemented. So what is showing now on the Ryan Drive Working Group is one slide that they had for priorities for the site that you can see, but generally speaking, if you Google Ryan Drive Working Group, it will pop up on the city's website, the report that they made in 2018, in April of 2018, and submitted to the council. The council and our office led on a resolution to initiate a request for proposals to redevelop the site, and a consultant was hired, and Jill Fagan was a huge part of that. We had a winner. In the end, it was Ben Barland and his group. I think Ben is on the line, and he'll probably talk about his project. But we're very excited about what's going to happen with Ben and how that Ryan Drive Working Group recommendations will be implemented into his plan, and how his plan will be incorporated into the entire Crestview Station vision with Project Connect. So I do want to call out the fact that Joe Gosling is on the line and who served on the working group. So thank you, Joe, for attending. And there's probably other members I'm not mentioning. So thank you all who did participate in the working group, and thank you, Ben, for being here. Ben probably can tell you a lot more about that effort and, of course, his project.
Thank you, Louisa. I am Ben Barlin from 3423 Holdings, the developer that the city chose for what we are calling Crestview Village. And as Louisa said, the working group called out. This working group was residents of that area, as we talked about, and they called out 4 separate areas, which we have tried to incorporate in this plan that you see in front of you for what we're calling Crestview Village. And that includes affordable housing, which is a very important piece of this whole puzzle, as well as parkland, creative space for artistic endeavors, and a robust transit plan. Now, our plan for this includes a complete urban village with a 5-acre park. So if you take this in context, the city site is only 5.5 acres. We are taking land that we actually own co-joined with the project to the north, and we're turning that into a 5-acre park for the community. So a pretty amazing thing. As part of that as well, we are funding the development of a very, very nice park, including a new community center, a splash pad, dog park, as well as lots of open space for the community. And that's all fully funded. We really look especially to the Cultural Arts Center, which will include its own stage and performance venue, as well as areas for nonprofits that we support. We want this to be a community-led effort, so we also have engaged our Austin Parks Foundation to run the actual engagement with the community to refine what is actually desired in the park, and to get all the community increase in that whole area. In exchange, we're asking for a height increase for our property to the south, approximately 9 stories, like the office building for the Health and Human Services across from the triangle, to help fund that effort and to bring it to fruition. Next slide. So, what are the things too that we're looking at right now? We want to have a really nice transit plaza that is connected to this facility, that is seamless and makes this equitable transit-oriented station to be available to all citizens, and to make it very, very easy. Right now, if anybody uses the transit hub, they know it's difficult to get to. It is a roundabout and makes it very difficult. And we really want to make sure that is changed. And we'd like to have it, as we talked about other multi-mode like bikes and pedestrians, to connect to that. Currently, we're in negotiation with the city to refine all of the requirements for this that the city wants put into this, as well as public meetings. We have our first public meeting on this next Monday at 6 o'clock, and we urge you to join us for that on this type of venue that we're doing right now. And we would really like to, be participating in this reconception of the orange and red line changes. And there's, as we'll see later on, there are some very exciting things that the Project Connect is envisioning for this whole project. And as we talked about, engaging Austin Parks Foundation to make an early community plan for this, even before we start any type of building or breaking any ground. Next, please. I guess that's it for me.
Great. Well, thanks again, Ben, for walking through. There have been a lot of questions coming in through the Q&A feature, which you can use at the bottom of the screen if you're in Zoom. If you're on social media, you can also put questions into the chat on the live broadcast, and we'll bring those into the discussion as well. We do have the ability to raise your hand, and if you do, we can call on you to answer questions. And I think I'm gonna probably kickstart this by pulling some questions that we've covered a little bit in the Q&A, just to get the party started. And so Gwen, you might want to pull down the questions slide, and that way we can allow the people who are backstage to turn on cameras, and that way if I call on you, you might be able to answer live. And so let's see, we'll start with, let's ask this question here. So regarding bikes at Crestview Station, people have been wondering if there's going to be bike share there, so Metro bike. It seems like Roberto, you might be able to answer that. And in fact, I'm going to encourage everybody who's working Q&A and is willing to speak on screen to just go ahead and turn on your cameras so that way we can see you. I know there's a lot of you on the red line as well. Roberto, can you talk a little bit about the expansion of Metro bike in this area possibly?
Yeah, and I think Peter may be able to add, but every opportunity that we have to incorporate our bikes are being included as part of our plans, and Metro bike would be one of those options that we would look to. So I'm not sure if Peter has anything else that he may want to offer,
but honestly, this is part of why we're having this meeting, because if people want more Metro bike, we want to hear it and build that into the plan. Certainly, making sure that we have lots of capacity for people to get here by different modes is really important, and Metro bike, fills that kind of first last mile connectivity to the neighborhood, and so yeah, it's a great idea for this site for sure.
So then I have, I think we're going to combine a few questions. There's some questions about the future for rail. So there was one question about will the red line become light rail and what stands in the way? And the other one is, this gold line that's rapid, is that still going to become light rail? So they're kind of related questions. I thought I'd throw those out and see who wants to grab at them.
Lonnie, this is King here. I would like to answer the first question regarding red line converting to light rail. No, red line is a heavy rail, and there are two different types of rail systems. One is a heavy rail system, other one is a light rail system. And the heavy rail system is with the capacity of handling heavy volumes of traffic, and we run freight on our rail line corridor as well. So the answer is we cannot convert that to light rail. And regarding the second question about the gold line, yes, there is a plan in the future to convert gold line into a light rail transit. So that might happen after several years.
We should clarify, so some moving parts on the gold line, right? So I don't want to get anybody's expectation that we're going to have light rail coming up Airport Boulevard. I don't think that's yet part of the plan, right? We, first part of the gold line is to do it as a Metro Rapid line, which is easier to expand as we're proposing potentially up here to Crestview and to North Lamar Transit Center. I don't think there's ever been any discussion about when eventually it becomes light rail, bringing that up here as well. So just to set expectations, but good question.
Let's see, I see a hand up, and so I was going to take that question from Philip Russell. If you unmute yourself, you'll be live on the air.
Yes, I wonder if transit regulations allow two lines to cross at a grade crossing. We've got the red line and the line on Lamar. Will one have to have either an underpass or an overpass?
Peter, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, so Philip, I don't know whether you've got advanced look at our presentation, but that's like the next slide coming up. So the answer is no, light rail and the heavy rail cannot cross in the same plane, and we'll talk through that in a second, but good question.
And again, for the audience, we're trying to break things up tonight because there's so many moving parts, so many different pieces of this puzzle. And so right now we're taking questions for this first piece. If there isn't a lot of action, we'll continue the program, and there'll be an additional Q&A period a little bit later in the program. In the meantime, one question that came up, I think Anna, you might want to grab this one, Anna Martin. Let's see, there's a question about slip lanes. Is there a long-term plan to close those, or what do you think about that? You're muted.
2 years, I'm still muted all the time. We are looking at slip lanes really all over the city now through the work we're doing on corridors. We know that they cause a lot of issues with pedestrians, as well as some right angle maneuvers. So it's something that we're looking at closely. You'll see a change coming up at Airport and Koenig. The interchange there will be removing those slip lanes. After looking closely at Lamar and Airport, though, we decided to defer any major reconfiguration there to further study, knowing that the red line and the orange line have major changes coming up. So we're working with those teams to design the best intersection for all the modes that we'll be mixing at that location.
Thanks for that, Anna. This one looks like it's for Ben. Ben, there's a question about whether there'll be some special walkway from Crestview Village to the train station. Is that part of your plan?
That is an absolutely true statement. There should be a seamless and viable walkthrough to all parts of the community, including from Ryan and from Airport and Lamar. We plan a very open plan that allows both bicycle and pedestrian traffic on all sides of the lots, so that it's very easy to access the trains. And if we do, as we're going to see a little bit later, the new elevated station at the corner, I would think that that will even improve it even further. So kind of a two-phase piece that I think will be shown here in just a moment.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Ben. I see I've got 3 hands up, and then after that, I think we're going to transition to part 2. And I see Andrew Pyle at the top of the stack. So Andrew, if you unmute, you'll be live on the air.
Hey, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. My headphones doesn't have a microphone piece, so.
Looking good, sounding good.
Perfect. So I know that the biggest part of this Crestview piece is the crossover between the red line and gold line, and I'm just wondering, have y'all even considered like making like one of them like underground to make the other more efficient, or like how do y'all look at that angle?
Andrew, you're just teeing up the spoilers tonight. Peter, do you want to say anything?
No, except that we're about to talk about those opportunities right now. So great suggestion, and stay tuned for a couple minutes.
Yeah, we'll show you some fun stuff. We've got 2 more questions, and then we're going to move on to showing some of that. I see Ryan Johnson with your hand up. If you unmute, you should be live on the air.
Yeah, thank you, Wani. Thanks for hosting this, and hello to Katie Weddick. This question is for you, and sort of for both Katies. Thinking about the Red Line Parkway and other pedestrian and wheelchair and bicycle improvements in the area with Project Connect, how are you thinking about connections to the trail, to the station, into the surrounding neighborhoods, where currently the train tracks themselves are actually quite a huge barrier to getting onto the existing and planned portions of the Red Line Parkway?
So I'm happy to speak to this from the trail side, but then I don't know if there's anyone who wants to take it from more of the bikeway connections into the neighborhood. From the urban trails perspective, we're really focused on, how can we increase connections to transit with where we're building our trails, right? So for people to use transit, they have to be able to get to the stations. So can we do this by partnering with Cap Metro to build our trails near their tracks, and then also add the Metro bike share, like was already discussed. In terms of being able to cross the rails, I think that that's definitely something that we see as a barrier throughout the city, whether that's Cap Metro or, Union Pacific, which is even more challenging to cross. And that's something that we're looking at as we update the Urban Trails Plan through ATX Walk Bike Roll. And so we'll have kind of new ways to address that coming out of that planning process. But in the meantime, we've been working really closely with Capital Metro, because we all have the same interest on how do we get people to these transit stations.
Thanks for that, Katie. And let's see, we've got one last hand raised from Stuart Reichler. If you unmute, then you'll be live on the air.
Yes, thank you. So this area, the whole Crestview Transit area, serves as one of the headwaters for Waller Creek. And for the Ryan Drive project, I'm wondering about any kind of rainwater retention that might be incorporated into the project.
So it sounds like Jill or Ben might have a little bit more about the water retention in that area.
We are very early on the planning process. There will certainly be a concerted effort to ensure that all of the sensitive waterways and runoff from the site are properly mitigated and handled. But as of tonight, we just can't answer that. We're just too preliminary into the planning process.
All right, well then I think that takes us through part one here. I think we should go ahead and switch to our second half. We've got Isis starting us off with the Crestview Station Orange Line, and we're gonna learn a lot more about how these lines are gonna interact with one another.
Everybody, my name is Isis Hernandez. I'm with AECOM, which is one of the consultant firms that is trying to design this monster that is the Orange Line. Is just a lot to consider, and so we're working very hard on it. Can you go to the next slide, please? Perfect. Okay, so as many of you already touched on this, Crestview is going to be the orange line crossing the red line, and also the blue line is going to stop here. So the circles are representing the stops that this the red line and the orange line are going to be doing. And as you can see, the blue line is coming from the airport. As it gets to Republic Square, then we share the tracks with the orange line, and so the blue line will also be stopping at Crestview. So next slide. So you all heard this already. Can we cross the freight with the light rail? So if you missed it, no, we cannot. And so the freight is, the red line is running on with the freight. And so one of them has to be in a different level. And so what we're proposing right now is for the orange line to be elevated and for the freight and the red line to stay at grade. That means that then there is no conflict and there's a safer environment for both of these lines. Next slide. So how can this look like? So what you are seeing right now on the screen is the orange line station. The orange line under the train, that is representing the station. As you can see, it is centered with the red line and also airport. And then to your left, you have Justin Lane. It is in a bridge structure completely on over columns at this location. And if you're crossing Justin Lane, then you'll be able to do it under the bridge, no problem there. Next slide. Let's zoom out a little bit and understand how are we getting to that elevated station. If you can see on both sides of the screen, and let me orient you here, north is to the right of your screen. So north is pointing to the right. So you're seeing this orange shading, that is representing the orange line being at grade. In both of these sides, you can also see that that orange shading changes into like a black kind of shading, a box, and that's a retained fill section. So that is a transition between the at grade running, the orange line running at grade to that structure that we saw in the previous slide. And so the length of that retained fill varies depending on the ground and other things, but we're going up as fast as possible to be able to, as fast as possible as well, shift to the side of the road. So as you can see, Lamar is to the east, and then the orange line will be on the west side of the road, starting somewhere around Justin Lane, and between Justin and St. John's, that's when the orange line will be on the west side of Lamar. And then just north of Justin, and again between Justin and St. John's, that's also the area where we would have the station. You can also see the existing red line with the existing station right where it is called out. That's the existing station. So if we can go to the next slide, you'll see a little bit more detail on what we are proposing. So let's start with the east. On the east, you see orangey shading, and that's representing the bike facilities. Next to it, the green is representing the tree and furniture zones, and then next to it is sidewalk. So all around the east, we are proposing separate facilities for bike and pedestrians. Now on the west, we are proposing the same south of Justin and north of St. John's, but in the area between Justin and St. John's, you're seeing this yellow, wider section. That is representing what we're calling a shared use path. It's basically, we have to accommodate the columns, the elevators, the stairs, the escalators in this area. Everything is gonna land there. And so we need to provide a wider area for the pedestrians and the cyclists. So right now we're just showing it as open space for everybody to be able to access the station. If we go to the next phase, slide, you can see this is the aerial view. So this is the platform level view where you can see there's escalator and stairs on both sides of the station, as well as elevators on both sides of the station. So on this is the view from if you're in the air trying to grab the station. So if we go to the next phase, yes, thank you very much. I think it is clear over here to see it. So we have the elevators in the middle of the platform. The platform is a central platform, so it would be serving the trains going north will stop at this platform, and trains going south would also stop at this platform. And then you can see the stairs and the escalators, everything landing on that shared use path that I was talking about earlier. And again, we are proposing stairs, elevators, and escalators on each side of the station. Next slide, please. Okay, so we talked about this a little bit earlier, but now you understand a little bit better on what you're looking at. You're looking at the columns, the station in the middle, and then Justin. Justin is gonna have to cross some vehicles trying to take a left onto Justin or out of Justin, then they're gonna have to cross under the columns or under the bridge. And they have enough clearance to do it. There's not a problem there. If we go to the next slide, we can look at the north end. So same thing in St. John's. You're gonna be able to cross under St. John's and access St. John's no problem under the bridge. And then you can see a little bit better what the retained fill section will look like. So it's basically these two walls that are as short as possible. On the north side, it's a little bit longer than on the south side, and the north side, it ends around Sugary. If we go to the next slide. So here you go. This is a better view of what it is. You have the red line running under the station, airport not being under the station at all, and then Justin and St. John's, again, crossing under the bridge without a problem. And next slide. There you go. That's it from me. I'm gonna turn it to King to talk about the red line.
Good evening. My name is King Cole. I'm with Capital Projects Group at Capital Metro. I'll give a brief description about the red line, freight line grade separation study. Here on this slide, you will see currently Capital Metro is running red line and freight at grade through airport and Lamar intersection. And Capital Metro is in the process of doing a study for grade separating red line and freight below Lamar. We are in the process of doing a 15% level preliminary engineering design. And the extents of our study for this grade separation is between Guadalupe to east of the intersection and Morrow to the west of the intersection. So you will see on the right side, it is Guadalupe Street, and our study area starts from there, goes across Lamar and all the way up to Morrow Street. Next slide, please. This slide shows the intersection of North Lamar and Airport Boulevard. You'll see towards the top of the slide is north, and actually towards the top of the slide is west, and towards down is east. And we are showing a trench here below Lamar Boulevard, which starts from Guadalupe and goes all the way up to Morrow. In this trench, we are having two tracks going under Boulevard, under Lamar Boulevard, and we have a platform which is shown in red color below Lamar, and that is the platform, central platform, which is about 22 feet wide and 280 feet long, with the extensions for vertical connectivity. And this is about 30 feet below Lamar. And we'll have this station with vertical connectivity on both sides, east as well as west. And the vertical connectivity we are providing is the staircase, and we are having the escalators and an elevator connected with a footbridge, which will go north-south and connecting the sidewalks in the nearby areas. And on the west side, it's going to connect the Midtown Commons transit area and also the development on the south side, actually southwest side. Next slide, please. This slide shows a cross-section of a below-grade red line station under Lamar Boulevard. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is about 55 feet wide, and is going to be about 30 feet below the top of the elevation of Lamar. And it will accommodate a platform which is about 22 feet wide, central platform having the tracks on either side of the platform, one on the north side, other one on the south side. And the vertical connectivity has been elaborately shown here with the staircase and an escalator, an elevator, and connected with a footbridge going north-south direction for the pedestrians use, crossing over to Midtown Commons area and on the south side going to the development. Next slide, please. And as I just mentioned earlier, we cannot cross, we have a constraint that we cannot cross light rail with a heavy rail. Heavy rail in this case is the red line, and light rail is the gold line. And that's why we are trying to study this alternative, which is the orange line at grade. And in that case, we'll have to take the red line below grade from Guadalupe to Morrow. Next slide, please.
I think I'll take it from here, King.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're back at orange line. And so if you saw before on the slides that we were showing before, the orange line was not aerial. And that's because if the red line is able to go underneath, then the orange line is then there's an opportunity for the orange line to stay at grade. So changing directions back again, north is to the right of your screen. So airport is east-west, and to the right is the north. So when we are, when the orange line is able to stay at grade, you're seeing that we are staying now in the center of the road for the entire section. So we're not shifting to the west anymore, we're staying in the center. And the station shifted from center between airport and the red line to the north of airport. So now the station is still a center station, but it's to the north of airport and it's in the middle of the road. Can we go to the next, please? This way, the station will be able to be accessed for pedestrians through the intersection in St. John's and through the intersection at airport. We also have the red line, as King mentioned. It's now centered between Lamar, and they have access points through both sides of their station as well. Next. So this is a flat view of what the station would be. As you can see here, we have pedestrian and bike facilities on both sides of the road, similar like before, with trees on each side as well. We have the dedicated left turns as they are right now, and then the platform in the middle serving, again, trains going north and south. Next. In this view, you can see where the red line would be. So again, for the orange line to be able to stay at grade, the red line would have to be depressed, and this is just making that clear. Next. This is showing a view from airport onto the north. So this pedestrian crossing would be the pedestrian crossing at airport to access the station behind the train. In this view, the train is stopped at the station. Next. And so this last view is showing a few, all of the details on how would, if the red line is pressed, how would the orange line look like? It would still be in the center of the road with the station in the middle, like I said before. Pedestrian accessibility would be from both sides of the station. And then the next slide is going to show you how the base option where the orange line is elevated looks like, where we are elevated to the west side of the road of Lamar, and then the red line stays at grade, obviously, so that they're not crossing at the same level. Next. Peter, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, so as you can see, we're looking at two potential options for the orange line, and those options really are both grade separated from the red line. As we've said, you know, those two, the light rail and the freight rail cannot cross at the same elevation. So just to clarify, because I think it's important, right? The baseline scheme for the orange line as part of the Project Connect program is for the orange line to be elevated. And that's partly because there isn't currently funding identified for the red line grade separation project. However, because we think that there is an opportunity potentially to separate, to bury the red line below grade, as King was describing, you know, we are advancing the design of that, the planning of that, to, if in case the funding was found, that we could consider this other option. So that's why we're calling it an alternative opportunity. You know, the cost of this opportunity is not insignificant, right? I mean, we're preliminary cost estimates, you know, put that in the range of about, you know, $200 million to basically put the red line below grade in this trench. Again, early design phases, so that, you know, could evolve. But I think if, you know, if everybody feels really strongly about this program, you know, possibly we go and find other funding for this program and this project and pursue this opportunity. Right now, as part of Project Connect, the base option is the base option, but this other option does exist if desired. So that's where we are with the orange line, and we're going to want to hear, you know, feedback from you all on that. Okay.
For that, you're right. There have been a lot of questions coming in the Q&A. I'm going to start with those, and then I see that we've got some hands up. We're going to take those, and I want to remind people we have yet a third section and another Q&A coming up because, again, so many moving parts. But we've definitely gotten to some of the juicy meat today. For all of those who are going to be answering Q&A, I'd encourage you to turn on your cameras. Certainly, King, I think we could probably start with you. I've seen several questions in here asking, like, can't we just get rid of the freight? Like, does it have to come through the center of the city?
Yes, I might be able to. King, do you want me to jump on this one?
Yeah, Dave, go ahead and take that.
I'll introduce myself. My name's Dave Deck. I'm the Vice President of Rail here for Capital Metro. And the short answer to that is no. We do not have the option to stop servicing freight customers. We have a common carrier agreement that's enforceable at a federal level. That we must continue to service the customers that are along the rail line. And our rail line is 160 miles long from Plano out to Giddings. We are connected into the general system with the UP and BN interchange at McNeil. And that's how these cars get to their customers. But no, we do not have the option to stop serving the freight customers. That is by law, we have to continue to do that. And we do that under a contract with our partners at the Austin Western Railroad.
And King, I'll throw you a question about double tracking. Can you clarify, are we double tracking the red line from top to tail or in this section?
At this time, our experts have recommended that we do the double tracking at 3 locations on the red line corridor. And we are in the process of starting a 30% engineering design on those 3 locations. But as the requirement will come up for the operational flexibility, we may have to add some more double tracks in some of the segments of the red line corridor.
And then is Roberto still on the line? Because I think we had a service planning question here before I open up for hands. There was a question about if the 801 rapid stop was going to go away. in this area? And maybe it's not specific to the 801 itself, but just will there still be bus service that's there on Lamar as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, right now we operate regular, local, and high frequency service on Lamar Boulevard. Our expectation is that, we will modify our services to tie in with orange and blue line. For sure we will tie in at North Lamar Transit Center at the onset, where we will have the initial investment and terminus of orange and blue there. But we will work through the community and work through that process of how our routes change in and around this immediate area. It's likely that with orange and blue line mimicking so closely to 801, that changes will happen in the core area. North of the North Lamar Transit Center, we will probably look to retain as much as we can of that service and connect still to Tech Ridge. But those are all things that would come about as we get closer to changing the system in the next couple of years, and we'll be working closely with the community on that.
Thanks, Roberto. It sounds like you're saying that before changes are really made to that underlying bus service, there'll be opportunities for community engagement again.
Correct.
Thanks. So I see several hands up. I'm going to start with Stephen Knapp. If you go ahead and unmute yourself, you should be live on the air. Stephen.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I want to say thanks to David French and that question about the freight line concept. Freight line operations, they're required to be run, and I just wanted to question/comment if board member Poole and board member Kitchen are still on and listening. As like the board directors, I believe it was like 30 years ago that Cap Metro, the transit agency, bought the right of way, with the sole purpose of looking ahead at the future, which is today, when we may need to utilize this right of way for actual transit operations. Of course, we've been running the red line on it for 15 years now. And accommodating that with our freight passage. But I think now is the time, absolutely, board of directors, to look at, is it worth continuing our freight obligations on the track, specifically in the central part of town? Obviously, we have 160 plus miles of track. Can we continue to serve freight customers on the outskirts of town, but allow us to cancel those freight obligations in the central part of the town, simply because our freight operations bring in like $3 million a year, and we're looking at a complexity at this intersection. Like the slide just showed, potentially all this beautiful engineering. Peter, to your team, this is great concepts, but we're looking at adding 150 to $250 million to this project for something that only brings us $3 million to $5 million a year. So please, board directors, let's have this conversation. Is it worth it for our transit agency to continue to operate like a transportation agency when we are for moving people, not things? That's all.
Thanks again, Stephen, for your feedback. I'm not sure that there was like a question there, but certainly food for thought for all of our city council members who are listening, and board members too. Nick, I think I'm going to go to you. I'll butcher your last name, but if you unmute, you can be on the air and tell us it in person.
Yeah, hi. Nick Pellicciotto here. I'm with the Highland Neighborhood Association. I would like to know what plans are involved the re-engineering of the traffic lights and signals in this intersection and the intersection at Guadalupe and Airport Boulevard, the train crossing there, because having lived in this neighborhood for 10 years, and I'm the president of the neighborhood association, so I speak with a lot of people in the neighborhood, and the malfunctioning signals at both intersections and the sort of weird timing of the lights in ways that doesn't seem particularly optimized is a massive impediment to at least our neighborhood's mobility, especially east and west and north and south, to be honest. So I'd like to know, what kind of work is being done on, intelligent signal, like, I don't know. There's just lots of issues with the signals at both of those intersections. And I know why they are like that, because the stations are so close together and because of National Transportation Safety Board regulations about signals. But it's like an issue. It's like a big issue for us in the neighborhood. And it actually has like negative effects on public perceptions of Cap Metro and the Red Line. I should let you know that the fact that those lights don't work often are the train the arms go down and up for no reason. It really kind of turns people off. The whole.
Thanks for question. Just before I close your mic for a sec, just to clarify, are we just talking about the car lights, or are you talking about the pedestrian signals as well?
Well, I mean, they're interrelated, you know, because they interact. And so I'd say like the car lights, probably mostly, but the way the car lights behave also affects pedestrian crossings.
Okay, that's pretty helpful. Let's see, Anna, did you want to take a stab at that? And I'm not sure if Dave, you or King needed to assist because of the red line operation.
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer this on the spot, but I'd be happy in the chat to give you my email address, and maybe we can communicate offline. There's a lot of complexity there with the red line, as well as the freight and all the requirements that come along with that. But I'd certainly like to hear more, especially as it pertains to the gates going up and down and things like that. So Lonnie, if you can help facilitate connecting us by email, maybe we can try that way.
Well, sure. Nick, if you want to share your email, you can send me a direct email, I believe, a direct chat. I've opened up hosts and panelists, so you can share your email and I can pass it on to Anna. And let's see, Andrew Lynch, I see your arm up, but we haven't heard from Raquel Estevez before. So why don't we go ahead and let Raquel say hello. I'm going to allow you to speak, and if you unmute, you'll be live on the air.
Hi, everybody. I have a quick comment and then a question. So my comment is that I don't like the way the orange line looks in the middle of Lamar. That just looks really unsafe. Like I'm imagining trying to keep my kids in the middle of the station, you know, and not running either way into traffic. So just comment there. But my question actually is, in all of this design, I had heard that the red line could only have 2 cars at a time on the platforms. Is that true, or is that being taken into consideration to extend the number of cars that can be per train?
Thanks for that question, Raquel. Dave, did you want to take that?
Sure. So we are restricted at a lot of our platforms to 2 car sets for the DMUs. We are, as we're building, we have the center platform at downtown station that will accommodate, I call it 2 DMUs, but it would be 4 cars. The McCalla soccer station will accommodate those, as well as the Uptown ATX Broadmoor station will accommodate longer. And as we build out and as we remodel, and some of the plans that we're working on in the future of the Crestview area also include some longer being able to put trains together there. But we still have Highland Station, MLK Station, Plaza Saltillo Station, Lakeline, Leander that will only accommodate, and Howard that will only accommodate 1 set at a time.
And I can add to that, in the future, whatever stations we are adding to this rail line, we are providing 280 linear feet of platform length that can accommodate 2 DMUs, as Dave mentioned. That means 4 cars.
All right, folks. Let's see. I'm going to take one more question for this section, and I promise I won't pull your hands down so you can stay in order. But I am going to jump out of order for this, and I'm going to pick Lacey McCormick and allow you to speak. So just go ahead and unmute yourself, and you're live on the air.
Okay, great. Thank you for taking my question. I wanted to start just with a little bit of a comment. I see a lot of benefits to syncing the red line. It seems good that people could access the red line from both sides of Lamar. I like that it doesn't create a massive, quite long bridge that will really cut off Crestview Station, which is where I live, in the homes. It'll cut off us with sort of a massive bridge that I think seems like it would be hopefully as attractive as you could make it, given the circumstances. But it does seem like a bridge and an elevated train line will harm sort of pedestrian connectivity sort of in the whole area and will make not as pleasant a pedestrian environment. And I also wanted to ask, so my final comment is that syncing the red line and maybe the gold line as well, if that happens, would, I think, be better and get at we talked about the gates going up and down, then you wouldn't have to have those gates and it would be easier to drive on Lamar. And it seems like that would, I don't know, it seems like that would, smooth traffic on Lamar, which is, as everyone who's probably on this call knows, that intersection can really be very difficult. And my question is, what does the base option cost? I mean, obviously, I'm aware, I'm sort of under the impression that the cost of the orange line is baked into the project when we voted to create the funding stream for it. So it's not apples to apples, but that bridge looks pretty expensive, and I was wondering how much it would cost. And so how these options actually compare in terms of cost. Thanks, that's all.
Thanks, Lacey, for your comments and bringing safety into the discussion tonight. Peter, I think the question was about cost, though, for the base elevated.
So, Lacey, thanks for all your good comments. Really appreciate it. So when I talked about the costs for the grade separation for the red line and that option, that's essentially a net additional cost, right? So it's not just the cost of the red line. There are some savings to keeping the orange line at grade, but that's built into that net additional cost. I don't have a number for the orange line station. Again, it's sort of hard to say, like, depending on where you start and stop it. So, but that number that we shared before is a net additional cost for that option.
Well, thanks again for that, Peter. I think now we're going to switch again to do a little bit of Mentimeter to kind of get some feedback that will inform our urban design section. We'll have this Mentimeter, we'll have one more Mentimeter after it, and then we'll go to Q&A again. So thanks for trucking with us tonight. We're doing our best to cover a lot in a very short time. So again, if you are watching on Zoom, you can just hold your phone up to the QR code and log in. And whether or not you're on Zoom or you're on social media watching, you can always go to menti.com, that's MENTI.com, and enter the code 60716232. And again, you can always use that QR code. And I'm joined again by Megan. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Lonnie, good to see you again.
Long as last time, but
looks like we've got 34 participants and counting. That's great. It'll be similar to last time. We'll let everybody participate and then we'll start running through the results.
And again, I'll cut and paste that into the chat just in case you're walking away. Maybe you're cooking dinner, cleaning up, you're just listening to it across the room and you're like, oh, I can't get to it. Well, you know what? You can be seated on your couch and participate in Menti and don't even have to have the screen on to let us know what you think. So I want to make sure you have that opportunity. Again, menti.com and enter the code 60716232. I've thrown it into the chat and we've got about half the people on already logged into Menti. We'd love to see it grow higher, but I think we should go ahead and get the questions going so we don't have to stay here till 9 o'clock tonight.
And if you vote later, we'll still get the results. So continue voting if you like. So the first question is, what place, landmark, or characteristic best defines Crestview?
And again, for those who are asking, we're talking about, this Crestview area. So whether you're in Highland or Crestview, Wooten, Brentwood, or you're just a fanboy of Crestview generally, we want to know what best defines that area for you. And I will say as an aside that one of the first jobs I had when I came to Austin was with Project Transitions, and they're located there by that Crestview IGA. So every time I think of Crestview, I think of that shopping center and the businesses that are there. But that's just me.
Good one. I'm seeing a lot of Black Star again. The way these results will be shown is that they'll be shown in a word cloud. So the more often it's mentioned, the bigger you'll see it on the screen. 99 Ranch, of course, and the train station are there.
Yeah, so a lot of businesses, it's interesting, are really kind of essential there. And we're finding that that's the case all along the corridor. There are some essential small businesses that really make the neighborhood feel like the neighborhood. And in a lot of cases, we're working with them directly. So that way, during construction, we'll be able to provide some assistance and support. And for some of them, they may even be incorporated into stations that get built. But I'm seeing a lot of fuzzy tacos on the Crescent Mall, Little Deli Pizza, and the 99 Ranch Market. Definitely,
Yes.
of course, Black Star. Arroyo Seco, that's an interesting one. Definitely a big bike boulevard that runs through there, including Justin Lane.
Sure.
Thanks
This really just underscores that these restaurants and small businesses are really the core of what makes this place special.
Let's go to the next one.
All right. So for the next one, we have, what is your biggest hope for the Crestview area 10 years in the future?
And, this will be a real helpful thing to have. I think this is open-ended, so just anything you want.
See, I see more affordable housing, couple walkables on there.
I like the snarky comment that you'll actually have the rail done by then. I'm hoping that too. Yes.
We all do, yes.
Crestview will be way more dense, so maybe more places to live and work.
Great.
And more walkable. A lot of requests for walkability as well as affordability. It's exciting to see them so evenly split.
It is.
After school programs.
Center. Yeah.
Keeping some of those old growth homes still there.
Absolutely.
Less carbon dependent. Thanks for saying it that way, folks. It always gets me when it's done the other way. It's you're dependent on your car, not the other way. Making Lamar more walkable.
High frequency transit.
Hong Kong, that in 10 years time.
That's pretty intense. I don't know about that, but
maybe we'll develop something that in the area that could support transit like they do in Hong Kong. And so that's
absolutely.
Certainly, yeah. Let's keep going to. Is there one more?
I think so. So for our last one, when you think about Crestview 10 years in the future, what is one thing you're concerned about?
And this is a big deal for us. We want to know what these concerns are because we want to be part of the solutions and not part of the problems.
Absolutely.
I encourage you to think really like, how could this not go the way you're hoping?
Yeah, affordability, kind of both edges of that, definitely.
I'm seeing some, safety issues,
sure.
Gridlock. Some people don't want the freight there anymore.
Affordability.
That's really helpful. There's one, lack of green space. So there could be some opportunities in this area.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. It seems like affordability is really top of the fold.
It really does, yeah.
And then after that, it's like the public space. A lot of people are commenting on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see some people interested in really good stations. Us too. That's great.
I see a concern about, what will the environment be like underneath the elevated bridge? That's an important question to ask. All right. Thanks for this. And some other people are concerned that we won't do a full TOD, transit-oriented development growth pattern in this area. Well, let's see. Is this the last question of this section, or do we have one more? I think that's it for this time. Well, thanks for participating in this. We're going to be moving forward now to consider key urban design issues and the station itself. We'll be back with a little bit more mentee and then open to questions and the next steps in closing. So almost there, folks. Take it away, Peter.
Okay, woo! Just want to say, first of all, we got most of the people who started with us are still with us. So thank you for that. Recognizing this is a ton of information we're throwing out at you. Honestly, that's part of the point of tonight, is just to put all this activity that is centered around this location out on the table, try to get that information out there. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're just trying to throw it all out there, get some ideas out there, answer questions, etc. So and think about how we move this forward based on your impact, right, and your input. Sorry. So let's go to the next. So, first of all, we've got a lot of conversation about walkability and safety, and certainly that is top of mind for us anytime we're thinking about station design and really the area around the station, right? Certainly creating a high quality experience for people of all abilities is, a first principle for us. If we design for people with disabilities in particular, we design for everybody, right? So we've got to think about accessibility every step of the way and infuse that into everything that we do to make this station and all of our transit as accessible and welcoming as possible. Next. So when we're thinking about the Crestview Station Area design, we call out, I think, some 4 key criteria that we want to think about. And I'm going to go through these quickly so that we can really hear from you about this. But these are, ease of travel, the user experience in general, right? How is it beautiful, right? That's an important part of these experiences, that these are places of beauty that really where we want to be. Placemaking, lots of good feedback in the last Mentimeter about trying to make this a place, not just an intersection of 2 large roads. And so looking at how we can use the transit as a way to do that. And then sustainability and resilience. I really appreciated the comment earlier about Waller Creek. Certainly we have to build in water management and sustainability into everything that we do when we're considering the design. So go to the next. I'll go through some examples of questions that we could be thinking about as we start to build a vision for what this place could be, and that's where we really need your help. So number 1, safety, right? And safety for all modes of travel. Obviously, we have to have safe vehicular travel, but really focusing on our most vulnerable pedestrians, bicyclists. How do we make this as safe a place to navigate as possible? Next. Looking at crossings and connectivity. A lot of people mentioned the fact that the freight rail and the red line running at grade, that presents some challenges for traffic on Lamar, but also for pedestrians as well. So looking at different options for that, how do we make that a little more seamless? Next. And particularly pedestrian connectivity. We've got some great opportunities with the Red Line Parkway Trail, and that's studying how that could we can improve that moving through this intersection, but also making sure that the connections between the new development at Crestview Village and Midtown Commons and the Red Line Station and the Orange Line Station and the Crescent Shopping Center, all of that works together into a seamless, accessible pedestrian environment. Next. So the Midtown Commons Transit Plaza, that's this triangular space that's currently kind of in front of the Red Line Station, fronting onto Lamar, where that multicolored sculpture is and the 801 bus stop is. I think this is potentially the really one of the keys to the puzzle, because that triangular parcel is kind of at the center of everything. So how do we actually leverage that place to really function as the connector between all these different modes of travel and pedestrians moving through the site in general? Next. And then lastly, how do we make sure that the development and the transit is all integrated together into a seamless public realm? And really appreciate Ben Barlin being here and talking about Crestview Village. Obviously, he's and his team are really committed to transit and building an integrated system, and integrated public realm. So how do we actually facilitate that and make those key connections through the site and into the neighborhood to really facilitate access for everybody? Next. Okay, and then the big question is all these projects you've heard about, and if it's been a little mind-numbing, I don't blame you, because there's just so much happening here. It's a lot, right? But the question is, how do we actually help build a common vision? So all these initiatives, all these projects, whether it's the Red Line or Orange Line or the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit or the Corridor Program or the ETOD planning study, how do they all come together to create a great place? And this build a vision for what we're calling, a high quality, seamless public realm, where all these public and private projects come together, really just to build a place and a sense of place. And that's where we need your help to really help build that starting now and moving forward into the future. So then I think I'm going to pass it back at this point. Oh, no, here we go. So here's some ideas about how we can do that. Sorry. One is using the transit plaza as a kind of town center, right? That was actually mentioned by somebody in the Mentimeter, is that thinking about landmarks, really the train station is the center of this hub, and how do we leverage that? Looking at neighborhood character, how do we preserve that amidst all this change that's going to be happening at this transit hub? Improving safety, improving mobility. How do we advance the Red Line Parkway Trail to connect all these neighborhoods? And then how do we really use Project Connect to enhance the pedestrian experience? So these are just some ideas, not all of them. And this is where we want to really hear from you. And some specifics are tree planting, building more walkability through mixed use development, mixed income housing. One of the great things about Crestview Village is that there is a significant affordable housing component in there to kind of maintain that diversity of income levels in the neighborhood. And then placemaking, right? To really build a sense of community around this public realm and these public realm improvements. So these are really just kind of some ideas to kind of, generate some thinking, right? This is certainly not the full range of ideas. And this is really what we want to hear from you both today and going forward into the future. So I'll pass it back to Lonnie and Megan.
Well, thanks, Peter. And for everybody listening at home as well as online, we're taking it back to Mentimeter, and we'd encourage you, if you can advance the slide, to join us at menti.com. Enter the code 6071-6232. Again, we're going to gather your feedback about your priorities about urban design, and then we're going to open to Q&A. So no in between. It's just you and what you think. First, we're going to quantify your answers through Mentimeter, and then we're going to just open up the mic to questions that you may have. So I see about, we're getting to about 30 people in there.
Yep.
And again, yeah, I think we should get a few more people's opinion in there. And in particular, if you are watching online, you can join in on the conversation as well. Just point your phone to that QR code or enter 6071-6232 at menti.com. Let us know what you think.
All this feedback is really, really helpful. We appreciate you all taking the time to scan the code and put in your feedback. And again, this is our last one, so appreciate it.
All right, well, I would encourage you to do it. Maybe we'll inspire some FOMO.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's put up that first question.
All right. So our first question, which urban design opportunities would make the Crestview Station area a better place to live, work, or visit? And as you can see, we gave a few different options and asked you all to respond and rank them least important, most important. So we have more shopping opportunities, commercial growth, safer biking and walking. As you can see, they're starting to kind of equalize as votes come in. More job opportunities, improved transit connections, more affordable housing, a neighborhood park. So Lonnie, let's just sit here and see how these shake out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to just point out that we think that all of these things are important. And the problem as an urban planner is you've got to decide what's the ranking order? How does the community feel about this rather than just making a design on paper based on nothing? So we're really wanting to know how important are these things to you in comparison to one another.
Yeah, and this will also help us see, which things might need more targeted focus groups to talk about them, which things might need a little bit more research on our end. So this is really helpful.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see it's kind of reiterating some of the things that we've seen earlier tonight. Definitely pulled ahead are the safety issues, the transit connectivity, so not just the rail, but all the interactions there, and then affordability seem to be our top three for tonight. Why don't we go to the next question?
Sounds good. All right, next up, which urban design opportunities would make the Crestview Station area a better place to live, work, and visit? So same question, just different options. This is about urban design opportunities. So we have things such as improved public realm. And when we're talking about that, we mean furniture, shade trees, things like that. An enhanced transit plaza, childcare facilities, healthcare facilities, groceries, and then multi-use creative and community spaces.
You know, and a lot of these are, you know, in my previous work doing tri-transit, you'd ask somebody, well, do you use the bus? Do you use the train? And they would say, well, I would, but I need to do this thing. And so it could be, oh, well, I need to drop my kid off at school, or, oh, I need to go shopping, or my doctor's office is on this street. And so some of these things are about the actual just enjoyment of the space. And some of it is about like, what are the barriers to you participating as a transit or bike or walking commuter?
Absolutely. And this helps us understand, you know, which things are kind of low barriers that we can get to right away, which things will require a little bit more thought and research. We can kind of start to rank those. Yeah,
it looks like we have a few that are kind of sharing that top spot. So sure. A lot of people are interested in the plaza and the physical space that they're going to inhabit. That's what it looks like here as the top choices. And then below the fold are some of these services that people commonly request. At least that's a takeaway so far from this question. And do we have one more? Or?
I believe there might be one more. Let's have a look. Yes. All right. What would make it easier for you to get around in the Crestview Station area? So similar system. We have extend the Red Line Parkway Trail bike path, include Metro Bike. That was something that was asked earlier, so that should get some votes. Shorter bus transfers between the Orange Line and the Red Line, shorter rail transfers between the Orange Line and the Red Line, and the new bike and pedestrian connections from the neighborhoods to the station area.
You know, I think it's important to bring out those distinctions because, you know, that first question is about extending the Red Line Parkway Trail across Lamar. Versus Metro Bike, that's either storage or those bikes that you can rent out from Cap Metro in the city, those B-cycle Metro bikes. Yeah. And then the bottom one is about the bike pedestrian connections from Crestview. So that's sort of different than from the Red Line. And so we're trying to get a sense of your priorities in comparison to other options. And we purposely highlighted in all caps because there were 3 different bike questions and we wanted to make sure they're distinct from one another.
Yeah, that'll help us know if people like, you know, using shared micromobility, if most of them are riding personal bikes, you know, start to understand the user profile.
And then the same thing with shortest bus or rail transfers, that really matters, like where will all of the buses hub? You know, They currently come into Crestview. Maybe they'll stay on Lamar. Maybe they'll go further north on Lamar or down to Airport. Same for the train, you know, prioritizing being directly on top of one another or up the block is going to make a difference for your user experience. So we wanted to bring those to light tonight.
Absolutely.
All right, let's keep on trucking.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right. So I guess we're at that point for Q&A, and I know I have some things that are queued up from the Q&A document, but there have been some very patient people here. So I want to encourage everybody, King and Peter and Roberto and Anna and anybody else who imagines they're going to answer a question to get involved tonight. I think I'm just going to let Tom go first. I could ask this question, but I'm pretty sure that he can ask it as well. So Tom, I'm going to allow you to talk. Just go ahead and unmute, and you're live on the air.
Hi, this is Tom Wald with the Red Line Parkway. And first, I just want to say I really appreciate the discussion about the continuity of the Red Line Parkway. And we're thinking it'll probably have 5,000 to 10,000 users per day in this area, much like the Butler Trail, so it's much appreciated. So the question I had was about the analysis of the major components of that intersection, the roadways, the Red Line, the Orange Line. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about the analysis of a third option that wasn't discussed, which would be to put the roadways and then possibly the Orange Line below grade through that area and keep the Red Line at grade and then also provide an opportunity for a public plaza for walking and then biking over that intersection area. And related to that, I just wanted to find out, I understand there's only so much time tonight, so I'm just wondering if there'd be time for further, for follow-up on that question as well after tonight.
Well, yes, I believe so. This is, only the beginning of a conversation. Did anybody want to?
I could give that a shot, and then the technical team can back me up if I get over my skis. But I think, it's a great question, Tom. And actually, I think there are some others on the Q&A who asked the same thing, right? Could we actually bury the cars, right, as opposed to burying the red line? And I think, many of us who value pedestrian connectivity had that reaction. The reality is just the technical, what you would have to do to make that work, in part because of all the utilities that are running underneath Lamar itself, but also just because of the on-ramps and also need to continue to access businesses. You really have to duplicate roadways anyway. You can't eliminate them altogether because a lot of these businesses do need vehicular access. So, I think it was studied early on as part of the sort of early brainstorming about how to manage all this stuff, but it's really not that feasible to make that work. So, we've tried to think about some other ways in which we can achieve some of, I think, the goals of creating that more pedestrian-oriented environment.
All right, well, thank you for that. I'd like to welcome Felix de Porto into the room. All you have to do is unmute and you're live on the air.
Thank you. I wanted to mention something about the second part of the presentation. I do want to say that as a pedestrian, I do really like the sunken red line design. Because it doesn't add that large bridge up on Lamar, and it's definitely a lot more pleasing to the eye and a lot more pleasing to walk through. But I do want to echo the sentiment that someone did say about putting the orange line in the middle of Lamar being kind of dangerous for children. And on that note, I kind of got here late, so I hope this isn't something that you've already answered. But Lamar is by its nature a very high speed avenue. And is there any plan to, not just in this area but throughout the whole area, to mitigate the speed of Lamar and make it more friendly to pedestrians, not just around the station but throughout? Because as you're approaching 183, it gets much worse. Crossing the street, it's just very dangerous. And I would hope to see Lamar become a much more walkable area, especially with all these new 5+1 developments coming up, and a lot more people are going to be walking around the area. So are there plans to do that in the long term?
Let's see. Thanks for that question, Felix. I don't know, Anna, if you wanted to address that.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think just the matter of putting high capacity transit down the middle of Lamar will fundamentally change the look and feel and context, which in turn slows drivers down. So we'll be seeing a train in the middle, we'll be seeing bike paths and sidewalks and trees on the outside. And so Lamar is going to look and feel very different than it does today. And I think that's really one of the huge benefits of this overall investment that we're making.
Thanks for that.
I want to just add on to that a little bit, because I think one of the things that the center running platform does too is that it kind of breaks down the scale of the street, right? I mean, right now you've got all these lanes, and it has this big wide open sort of highway feel. But if you insert this sort of, again, pedestrian human-centered element in the middle of it, it kind of breaks it up, and I think will make the scale of the street smaller, which I think leads to what Anna was talking about just slowing the whole thing down and making it feel more, again, human scaled.
Well, let's see, we've got 3 hands up, and I know we're just a few minutes over, but we're going to make sure to take these questions. There's another team that are working on your Q&A comments in the background, and so certainly we're working to get all of those answered as well. Philip, I'm going to allow you to speak. Just go ahead and unmute and say hello.
How many years do you think it will be before some type of construction actually starts?
Thanks for that question. I know Peter, did you want to try to do that one?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Philip. I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to be talking more about later this summer, right, is what we call the segment phasing plan for the system, right? We know that we can't be in construction on all of it all at once. And so, I mean, because it would be impossible and also a burden to everybody. So we're going to be looking at what the implementation sequence is going to be, or segment phasing is going to be. And that will have some time associated with it. So don't have an answer for you right today, but I think we'll have more answers on that this summer.
Thanks again for that. And Kara Seabolt, if you unmute, you're welcome on the air.
Hey guys, I live in Crestview and I've lived in Austin for like 30 years. So, I mean, I don't mean to be like jaded or whatever, but Oak Hill is still messed up. And to me, that seems like a much easier fix than all these plans. So I don't know if we have to be real realistic about it. Have we already decided that the orange line is like the next thing? Or, I mean, I don't know, from just a general Austinite perspective and with tourism in mind, seems like the blue line to the airport is the no-brainer. Like, why are we this large city with no airport transportation? And I just wonder if that train has already left the station, no pun intended, or if there's still a priority vote on what line goes next.
Thanks for that, Kara. It sounds like your question is orange line coming first or ever? And then is the blue line going to come first? I don't know, Peter, did you want to address that?
Well, it's the same answers I just gave. That's one of the things that we're looking at right now, and I think we'll have more ideas and proposals about that. I saw the council member came back on, so I want to give her a chance to weigh in if she wanted to. I don't know if she's just wanted to say good night to everybody on to close it out, or if you have something to add specifically to that question.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I wasn't going to respond to any of the questions except to say thanks for everybody for spending the time with us here tonight, because this is, as we all know, really important. And just to emphasize, this is the first in a series of town hall and community give and take sessions that we'll be holding. The next one in District 7 will be focused more specifically on the neighborhoods directly around Crestview Station, and that will be Sunday, June 5 from 2 to 4 in the afternoon at Black Star. And just really appreciate everybody's input tonight. I know there's a lot of questions that you guys will be following up with to get people written answers if you weren't able to respond to them verbally here tonight, but I think there's some important information that should be emphasized to the community about plans that have and questions that have been answered through the planning in the past. So it's really important to, for example, the use of the UP lines and the history of how Cap Metro is even able to run its trains on the Union Pacific lines, which was not an easy agreement to get or concession to get from Union Pacific. So that's a really important piece of information that we need to convey to folks. So thanks again. Always a tip of my hat to the experts and the really top-notch professionals that we have working for the Austin Transit Partnership and Cap Metro.
Well, thank you so much, Council Member. And we appreciate you being here most sincerely and helping to steer the direction. Let's see, we've got 3 questions left. I'm going to take those live, and then Gwen, hopefully you'll put the slide back up so that way we can at least show people the upcoming events, which include that future conversation about Crestview Station that'll be happening at Black Star Co-op. So we'll make sure to flash that on screen. And so I see Sarah Peralta. If you want to unmute yourself, you can say hello.
Hi, so I am curious about funding sources for the second option for the Orange Line train. So I know you presented 2 options. One is with the train station on the platform going above grade with the red line on the ground level, and then the second option, which just by the comments I'm seeing the Q&A and some commentary from my neighbors here, it seems to be more popular with the Orange Line being buried, right? So I noted that there was an earlier question about how much it costs, the net cost and all that. and then there was a question mark on that slide about funding, like TBD. I want to ask to the planners and the professionals here, what's the likelihood? Like, just give me like 10%. Is it a skylark? Like, how likely is it that we could even get funding? Where would we even apply for funding for if we wanted to get the option that's less obtrusive? It just sounds like it's going to impact the neighborhood less negatively to have the orange line buried. So obviously that's the preferred option, but how likely is that? Is that even a real possibility, or we just dreaming? Go ahead.
Sarah, thanks for that question. I think Peter, you might clarify about which rail line could go below grade and which would not. Right. Just because it sounds like there's some confusion about what could be buried.
Yeah, so Sarah, great question. And just to clarify, you know, the base option that we're looking at as part of the orange line is the red line staying at grade, the orange line being elevated. And then there is this potential opportunity of putting the red line below Lamar and then leaving the orange line at grade. And, you know, I think, look, one thing to point out in all this is that the federal government is a really crucial partner with us in this endeavor. Certainly, you know, a significant part of the orange line will be funded by the Federal Transit Administration. Because the orange line, because the red line has, you know, is a heavy rail, it's kind of a different category. You know, there may be different funding sources at the federal level to support that grade separation project for the red line. For example, the planning study that King and his team are undergoing right now, and Dave, that they're doing right now just to study it, that was funded by a federal grant, right? That's interested in these kinds of grade separation projects. So, you know, there are other funding sources that we can explore. You know, I'm not saying, you know, we know what those are yet, but, you know, and I will say, you got to dream to be able to realize it. You know, I think we have to think in this moment of transformation, you know, where do we want to go with all these projects and programs? Because if we don't think that way, we'll never get there, right? So let's figure out where we want to go, and then we can hopefully figure out how to get there. That's my pitch.
I appreciate that. It's helpful to hear and hopefully clarified some of the considerations. It looks like Joseph Gosling is going to be our last speaker. I have to. I guess Joseph, you're using an older version of Zoom, and so I'm not really able to do that. What I'm going to do is promote you to panelists at the moment, so you will be able to speak and even be seen. And then I'll move you back to the audience after. So if you don't want to be seen, you don't have to.
Wow. Did not expect us to close it out and be on the camera. I had a question I put in the chat, but I think it's quite important. Earlier in the chat, someone had mentioned that the depressed red line could take as much as a mile to get back up to grade, since they're going at 2% for the freight. That seems like a really long ways, and probably explains why it's so expensive. That also, just based off of a quick measurement on Google Maps, seems like it would sever the Morro crossing, it would sever the Guadalupe crossing. What does that do to the neighborhood?
So King, I think this one's for you, and I'm gonna let you talk about this project a little bit more.
Yes, the down incline will start west of Guadalupe Street, and it will end. The up incline going west will end before Morro, and it is about a mile long double track that we are planning to provide in a trench, but it will be within Guadalupe and Morro. We'll not cross either Guadalupe or Morro Street with the double tracking. So those are the extents, those are the limits of the project.
Yeah, and that's one of the brilliances of the engineering team, is you can only move a train up and down so quickly, and yet somehow it's going to happen between Guadalupe and Morro if it is funded. So,
and because of the freight constraints, we have to limit the grade to less than 2%, and we are trying to maintain about 1.70% grade.
Well, that's all the time that we have tonight for answering live questions. I was hoping, Gwen, that you could put the slide show back up. so that we can make sure that people can remain engaged in this and other events. Of course, all of this is on the Project Connect website /get-involved. You can even see all of our previous meetings, recordings, videos, PowerPoint presentations by clicking on the engagement library button at the Project Connect website. As you can see, there are other conversations coming up. Tomorrow night is Southline, so those projects south of Stastny. On the 18th, we're going to talk about North Guadalupe, which may be interest here. So pretty much from about 38th Street up into this section of town. So you'll have another chance to talk about it a little bit. We've got a Lady Bird Lake Bridge workshop coming on April 26th. At the beginning of May is North Lamar Transit Center and North Line. So we'll go into a little bit more detail after the workshop we had earlier or at the end of last year. In addition to that, there are a ton of workshops, and the one that I want to highlight is a follow-up conversation about this station with Council Members Poole and Council Member Vela at Black Star Co-op on Sunday, June 5th at 2 o'clock. So you can prepare your day drinking and policy wonkery on Sunday, June 5th at Black Star Co-op with Council Members Poole and Vela. That's all we have time for today. But again, we'd encourage you to go to projectconnect.com and stay engaged. Thanks again for your interest, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.